We are down to 8 in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We are going to break down all 4 second round series, giving you our picks and predictions. Welcome to Pinnacle's NHL Best Bets. I'm Anthony Bruno, joined by Scott Cullen and Ben Barclay on behalf of Pinnacle, your trusted sportsbook for over 25 years, offering the best odds and best payouts in the market. All right, fellas, let's not waste any time. I want to dig into the first series in the second round, and it's going to be the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. Just one note, actually, before we dig into the series. 7 of the 8 favorites moved on to the second round. The only favorite that did not move on was, of course, the Colorado Avalanche, who Scott and I picked to win the Stanley Cup. So I guess that's just how it goes. The only favorite that did not get through. Very chalky first round. But let's start things out with the Leafs and the Panthers. The Panthers are minus 175 favorites despite not having home ice advantage in this series. So, Scott, let's start with you. Will the Leafs finally get to the conference finals for the first time in the Matthews and Marner era? Or will they just be another victim of the Florida Panthers as they look to get back to the Stanley Cup final for the third year in a row?
Well, I'll be honest. I maybe didn't have the highest expectations of the Panthers going into their series against Tampa Bay. Like, I thought Tampa Bay was looking pretty good late in the season and would give them a real test. And then all of a sudden the playoffs started and the Panthers looked like a championship team once again. And so based on what I saw in that series, they had Panthers had 6 players who had at least 5 points. So I really liked their depth. And they managed a relatively easy win with Matthew Tkachuk not playing a whole lot. You know, he was playing fewer than 14 minutes per game. He played more than 18 minutes per game during the regular season. And if they can kind of make short work of Tampa Bay with, one of their best players not at full strength, I like their chances coming into this round against the Maple Leafs. Now, Maple Leafs, I didn't think necessarily played that well at even strength against Ottawa. But the core 4 kind of rose to the occasion for them, right? Between Nylander, Marner, Matthews, Tavares, those guys led the way offensively, and I think that's kind of what the Leafs are gonna require. They're gonna need those guys to, basically eliminate all the criticism that has been heaped upon them over the years for their playoff performances, and rise to the occasion against the defending champs. And if they could do that, well then, yeah, the Leafs, have a chance to go on, but given the choice between, the Leafs shedding all their playoff history and the Panthers just kind of continuing on, I'm siding with the Panthers here.
All right, so Scott is backing the reigning Stanley Cup champions. And I should mention, Scott, you brought it up. Matthew Tkachuk, that's a player to watch out for here because he only played like around 13 minutes per game in round 1. We don't know how banged up he still is. And then the other news and note to pass along. Aaron Ekblad is also going to be out game 1. He's serving the final game of his suspension for elbowing Brandon Hagel in round 1. Outside of that, it looks like these teams are fully healthy across the board, although we never know how injured any of these teams are. Just like Tampa Bay in round 1, where we found out afterwards that basically the entire team was injured. But Scott is rolling with the Panthers. Ben, who do you got, Leafs, Panthers?
So in looking at the breakdowns of these teams, I look at a few things that I know what I'm going to get from. The Florida forward group is loaded. There are a bunch of killers up there. I know they're going to get theirs. And now I view this Toronto defense core much the same way. They're built, they're big, they're heavy. They did a fantastic job against Ottawa in closing up the slot completely and keeping everything to the outside. And then when those shots came from the outside, they got in the way of them. It was very difficult to get stuff to the net. So in a way, those might cancel each other out to some degree. It'll be low scoring, tight. And to what Scott said, it comes down to the core 4. Will they be able to rise up and get theirs and carry the offensive load for the Leafs? Special teams is going to be massive. Florida was the most penalized team throughout the regular season, and then their penalty minutes per 60 actually went up against Tampa. So I think the discipline will be troubling for them, especially early in the series. Like against Ottawa, the Leafs will need to get a power play clicking early and often. I think having guys like Stolars, Ekman-Larsson, and who's the other guy, Lorentz, who were on that team last year, they'll be big in trying to helping crack this Florida team. All that said, though, I still can't go away from Florida and everything they've done. Hand up, I think, amongst all of us, too. I was beating the Tampa drum in round 1, too. but it was more of a question, was Florida playing possum when it came to their status, health, everybody? And oh yeah, they were. So for me, it's going to be Florida. I'd take them at the price, minus 175. It's a little steep. If you want a little extra juice, I'd bet them to win 6 games and get that at around plus 350 at Pinnacle.
All right, so you guys are both on the Florida Panthers. I know you guys probably think I'm going in the other direction in this series because I am a Leaf fan. And listen, I am happy that my Leafs knocked out Ben's Senators in round 1. I mean, if the Leafs didn't win that series, my goodness. I mean, it was time to fold the franchise. So thank goodness they moved on to the second round. I'm having trouble here because my heart wants one thing, but my head is telling me another thing. I think this series is very simple. The Florida Panthers are an elite 5-on-5 team. If they are disciplined, they stay out of the penalty box, it's going to be very difficult for the Leafs to beat this team at 5-on-5 over the course of a 7-game series. The Leafs all season, they've been getting away with having elite goaltending, very efficient scoring, and relying on their power play. This Florida team is one of the best 5-on-5 teams in the league. And I think if they keep this series mostly at 5-on-5, they're going to have a very good chance of beating the Toronto Maple Leafs. So that's where I'm at here. I think the Leafs, in order to win this series, they need Anthony Stolarz to outplay Sergei Bobrovsky. And both goalies, believe it or not, had identical stats in round 1 when it comes to save percentage and goals against. In terms of goals saved above expected, Bobrovsky was a little bit better than Stolarz in round 1, but the Leafs are going to need Stolarz to outplay him. They are going to need their power play to operate at around the same clip as it did in round 1. Their power play was great against the Senators, operating at around 35%, and they're obviously going to need the big boys to step up, the core 4. If that does not happen, I think Toronto's in a very tough spot here. I think the game plan for Florida is going to be, let's shut down the Matthews and Marner line. Let's force the Leafs for any of their other 3 lines to try to beat us at 5-on-5. Florida, we know their formula. They are suffocating. It's so tight checking. They take away time and space. It's going to be very difficult for the Leafs, I think, to generate offense here at 5-on-5. So as much as I want the Leafs to move on here, I also have a very difficult time picking against Florida. I think Florida is going to win this series. I don't love the minus 175 price. I think it's priced pretty much right where it should be. You know what? The only saving grace, I guess, for the Leafs in this spot is that they have home ice advantage. They are home underdogs. They won the division. This is still a good team, but it is scary that Florida was able to flip a switch like they did in round 1. So I'm going to be on the Florida Panthers here. And like Ben, I actually am going to place a bet on them to win in 6 as well. And you can get that at plus 350 at Pinnacle. All right, so we're all on the Florida Panthers, which means that the Leafs are finally going to go to the conference finals for the first time in the Matthews, Marner, and Nylander era. All right, boys, let's move on to the second series in the second round of the playoffs. Staying in the Eastern Conference, it's the Carolina Hurricanes taking on the Washington Capitals. This series priced pretty similarly to the first series we just talked about. The Hurricanes minus 170 favorites, even though they don't have home ice. The Capitals priced at plus 151 at Pinnacle. Scott, let's start with you again. Who's taking this series?
Well, I think I'm leaning to Carolina here, and largely because I thought as much as Washington made relatively short work of Montreal in the first round, they also didn't dominate in the way that I might have expected them to. Montreal still kind of just snuck into the playoffs, and if you're a first place team like Washington, you should probably be able to handle them a little bit easier, because there were a lot of games where Washington relied on Logan Thompson to make some big saves to preserve their lead. And I just look at, if they had any kind of trouble with Montreal, a team who was, I believe, the worst possession team going into the playoffs, they're going to have a really hard time against Carolina, the best possession team coming into the playoffs. And I think that the Hurricanes, that they need a little bit more production, I guess, from their supporting cast. Like Aho, Svechnikov had a great first round. Those Aho, Svechnikov, Jarvis, those guys are doing their part. They do need more kind of from lines 2, 3, 4. But I think their kind of relentless, assault on getting shots on goal is going to pay off in this series. And it's largely because I think Washington, they didn't impress me, I guess, enough against Montreal. I expected them to kind of close out Montreal and be a little bit more dominant, I guess, defensively, and they weren't. And so I think that's going to pose real problems when they run into Carolina. So I'll take Carolina minus 170 in this round.
All right, so Scott is going with the analytics darlings. This team is so good at 5-on-5. They led the league in Corsi for percentage, expected goals. Like, this team every year is so elite at 5-on-5. And now they have won at least one playoff series 7 years in a row. This is where they start to kind of get into trouble when you get into the second and the third round.
Yeah.
But Scott is rolling with the Canes. Ben, Caps or Canes?
So I hear Scott's points. It comes down to a price thing for me. I can't quite make sense of the pricing on this. If this was Carolina as the 1 seed with home ice, I'd understand the minus 170 juice here. But I've been high on this Caps team all season, specifically when it gets down to this time of year. I think they're built for it, and I will be backing them at plus 151, I believe it is right now, to win this series. We saw this a lot in the regular season, betting day to day. Myself, the market loves Carolina, and I think it is due to their analytical dominance at 5-on-5, and it's just gone a little too far here for a team that's never been able to get over that hump of the second round. I know Washington in recent years, since they won the Cup in 2018, hasn't done that as well. They had lost 5 straight playoff series going into this one against Montreal. But I think the Canes have the bigger demons here, and they were about even in the head-to-head matchups this season. I don't know where the Canes are going to get their answer for the physicality and size of Washington when a Tom Wilson comes and takes their lunch money. I don't see where that response is, much like Montreal, not to say that they're the same team. Montreal was undersized, didn't have an answer for that physicality, it seems. Carolina, where closer, I still don't think just the size throughout the lineup for Washington, the style they want to play, they'll be able to dictate it with matchups with home ice. And the number is too good for me to pass up here. I think the goalies are largely a wash. The Washington penalty kill, missing Faravari, which happened a little bit ago, has taken a step back. I'm hoping Protas steps back into the lineup and rights the ship a little bit for them there. He was a key penalty killer for them all season. So it's strictly a number thing for me. I'll back Washington at the series price, and then I'll also sprinkle them to win in 7 at almost plus 500 there.
All right, so we're finally split on something. I should mention the last time that the Canes made it to the conference finals, they got swept by Florida in 4 straight. So we'll see if they can get over the hump. Now, in terms of where I am leaning in this series, when you look at all the underlying numbers, all the 5-on-5 metrics, as I mentioned, the Hurricanes are simply just better than Washington. But I'm kind of leaning with Ben here on this one. I think this is going to be a very close series. I like the fact that Washington are home dogs at plus 151. I'm kind of contradicting myself because it's the same thing with the Leafs, right? Like, the Leafs have home ice advantage. They're priced at right around the same. They're the worst 5-on-5 team, but they had a better regular season than Florida. I just think that this, to me, is going to come down to goaltending. So Freddie Anderson, he missed Game 5 against the Devils with an undisclosed injury. He was back at practice. It looks like he's fine. And actually, Freddie Anderson and Logan Thompson, when you look at goals saved above expected, they were 2 of the best goalies in the first round of the playoffs. They were both dialed in. Now, it's who's going to continue that into round 2. I will say I have more confidence in Logan Thompson doing that. He had the better season. And I don't know, this Freddie Anderson, man, this guy just seems to get banged up all the time. I have no idea. I don't think any of us have any idea exactly how healthy he is. If the Hurricanes have to turn to Kochetkov, I do not like that. So I think this is going to be a close series. I think the Capitals are going to win this in 7 games. So I'll be backing them to win at plus 151. And then I'll also sprinkle on them on the exact series price to win in 7 games at Pinnacle, because why the heck not? All right. Let's move on now to the Western Conference. And we're going to start in the Central Division with the Dallas Stars and Winnipeg Jets. It's kind of a miracle that the Stars and Jets are playing each other. If you watch those last 2 Game 7s, those were some of the best. That's some of the best hockey you're going to watch. Mikko Rantanen knocking out his former team with a heroic effort in the third period, down 2-0. And then the Jets scoring with 1.6 seconds left on the clock to force overtime before Adam Lowry won it for them in double OT. So I can't even believe that it's Stars Jets in this round. The Stars are minus 172 favorites at Pinnacle. Before we dig into who we like in this series, just some news and notes to pass along. Jason Robertson and Miro Heiskanen. According to Peter DeBoer, we will see them in this series. We just don't know exactly when they'll be back. And then on the Jets side of things, Mark Scheifele's banged up. He missed game 6 and 7 against the Blues, and Josh Morrissey left game 7 with an upper body injury. So we don't quite know the status of those guys yet. So let's start with Ben in this one. Ben, who do you like, Stars and Jets?
So much like the two series in the East, we have a team that does not have home ice advantage laying quite a big number here. In this one too, I lean Stars. I don't have a pick myself on winner here. To me, it's a battle of who gets healthier sooner. The Stars, and which is why I would give the edge to the Stars based on what we're seeing now. I think the forward depth for them is still better than the forward depth for Winnipeg when it comes to scoring. Winnipeg missing Scheifele. The center down the middle for them is just so thin. Like Nemestikov, I like how he played. I watched a lot of him in the last series. Lowry, I love as a captain too, but in the top 6 when you need him to produce offense, I don't know if he's that guy. I don't think without Scheifele, again, he could be back in game 2. Winnipeg will have enough to expose the Dallas defense, and then we could get Heiskanen back any day, and that changes everything in that defense where they can have one of him or Harley out there at all times pretty much. So, and then we can go to the goalies. It's the two best American goalies in the league, Jake Ottinger and Connor Hellebuck. I have to give the edge to Ottinger here too. Just, he's done it, at least getting to conference finals, almost getting to a cup final last year. He hasn't been the reason his team has lost. Maybe Hellebuck found something in that third period in overtime last night. He looked strong. He was getting out in front of his net, getting bigger. I don't know why it took him almost 7 games to kind of figure that out. But for me here, yeah, based on what we have, the information, the status of players, I have to lead Dallas, but it's their first time getting or in a playoff series, I think, since 2023 or 2022, where they haven't had home ice advantage. So that's another variable too. And Winnipeg won all their home games against St. Louis, so it's clearly a big advantage for them. Hence why I can't place a bet on Dallas at this price. So it would be a lean, but too many unknowns for me to place a ticket on this one.
Yeah, that Winnipeg whiteout is absolutely electric. Who is not electric is Connor Hellebuck, who is going to win the Vezina, might win the Hart Trophy, and then was dead last among all goalies in round 1 in goals saved above expected. And now this is the 3rd year in a row where it's like, what the hell happened to Connor Hellebuck? He goes from being the best goalie in the league in the regular season to the worst goalie in the league, apparently, in the playoffs. So we'll see who shows up here in round 2. But Scott, where are you leaning in this series between the Stars and Jets?
Well, I'm leaning to the Stars, but I mean all the points that Ben makes are valid, and I think the thing that I can't kind of wrap my head around is Hellebuck. That he's been the best goalie in the league by a substantial margin for the past 2 years, and then in the playoffs he just falls flat. And after the first couple of games against St. Louis, it looked like he was okay, and then they went to St. Louis and got the doors blown off him, and all of a sudden all those past demons kind of came back, and it's really hard to have confidence in a Jets team because the Jets, even at their very best, they really depend on Hellebuck to be this great backstop for them. And if he's not, well, then they become a much more mediocre team. And you put that up against the Stars team that managed to take out Colorado. Obviously, you and I thought very highly of Colorado coming into the playoffs, and that they did it without Jason Robertson, a point-per-game winger, and without Miro Heiskanen, their number 1 defenseman. If those guys are back, I think the Stars have a decided advantage, even if Scheifele and Morrissey return for the Jets here. So I'll take the Stars at the price. I know it's probably a touch high, but I'm pretty optimistic about what Dallas has done, and they have the depth that should be able to push them through. Like getting Tyler Seguin back late in the season helps. That guys like Seguin and Ben in supporting roles for the Stars, that gives them some real value, because if you got Rantanen and Hintz kind of driving it at the top of the lineup, it's nice to have those veteran guys who have been through a few wars there to contribute as well. So I'm going to lean to the Stars here. I'll even take them at minus 172.
I'm not going to lie. I'm still rattled that my Stanley Cup pick and Scott's Stanley Cup pick is out in round one. Like I said, the only favorite to lose in a very chalky first round of the playoffs. Yeah, it's incredible what the Stars pulled off without Miro Heiskanen and Jason Robertson. But I am also leaning towards the Dallas Stars, and I actually think there might be a little bit of value on them at minus 172, especially if Heiskanen and Robertson come back. I mean, who knows? Maybe they're not back in game one. Maybe it takes a couple of games, but if those guys get healthy and the Jets are still banged up, if they're still without their number one center in Mark Scheifele, their number one defenseman in Josh Morrissey, that's going to obviously be a major issue. Whereas we saw the Stars overcome that with two of their top players. I think the Stars are arguably the deepest team in the NHL, especially at full health. Like, you go up and down that roster, it is such a deep team. And obviously they were able to get by the Stanley Cup favorites in the Colorado Avalanche. So when you look at, I always like looking at the 5-on-5 numbers throughout the course of the season. Like, the Jets were a better 5-on-5 team than Dallas. So, I mean, you could look at that and say, like, that's where they have a little bit of the edge. But like I said, I think maybe some of these numbers are maybe a little bit misleading with the Stars, just because I think they are so deep. And if they get healthy, this team's going to be a problem. I mean, they are not priced as the Stanley Cup favorites at Pinnacle. That still belongs to the Florida Panthers at the time of recording. But the Stars right now, plus 500. I mean, doesn't look too bad. But I'm going to be rolling with the Dallas Stars in this series. I am also concerned about Connor Hellebuck. He just has not looked good at all. Maybe, as Ben said, maybe he discovered something in the third period and in overtime in Game 7 against St. Louis. But I'm going to roll with the Dallas Stars here, and I will also lay the minus 172. I think if this team gets fully healthy, watch out. They could easily win the Stanley Cup. All right, let's move on now to the final series in the second round of the playoffs. And this one is a coin flip right now at Pinnacle. Oilers taking on the Vegas Golden Knights, minus 108 on both sides. Matthias Ekholm will not be available for the Oilers in round two. And on the Vegas side of things, Pavel Dorofeyev, he missed Game 6 with an undisclosed injury against the Wild. He was Vegas' leading goal scorer this year with 35 goals. So his status is still up in the air. So, Scott, let's start with you on this one. Who do you like in this coin flip series?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm a little surprised that both of these teams made it through. I thought Minnesota and LA early in their series both had them on the ropes. And so I see vulnerability here on both sides, but maybe a little bit more vulnerability with the Oilers because the goaltending again, and trying to predict goaltending is a fool's game, but here I am. That Stuart Skinner really had problems, and so they end up going with Calvin Pickard. And Pickard's been a career backup, and for the Oilers, a team that has real Stanley Cup aspirations, I find it hard to believe they're going to be able to do it with Pickard as their goaltender. So they're going to need Skinner to somehow find his game again, or Pickard is just going to have to exceed all expectations. And going against a Vegas team that has lots of playoff experience, won a cup recently with Aiden Hill in net. I'm going in their direction here, and the fact that Vegas managed to win in the first round with Jack Eichel producing very little, especially early in the series. I think that's sort of an upside here for Vegas, is that if you get Eichel going in a matchup that he should be super motivated going against McDavid, going back to their draft year when they were 1-2, that I think Vegas, given their experience and given the Oilers missing Ekholm and their shaky goaltending, I like the Golden Knights at minus 108.
Yeah, Jack Eichel, only one goal in 6 games against the Minnesota Wild. It seemed like Stone and Eichel just really did not get going in that series, and Vegas still finished the job in 6 games. All right, Ben, I think we both know where you're going in this series, considering that you picked the Vegas Golden Knights to win the Stanley Cup in our playoff preview. Are you rolling with the Vegas Golden Knights in this series, or have you maybe changed your mind?
So that I did, and no, I haven't changed my mind. I would bet Vegas here at minus 108. I think that's a fair price. It's with more hesitancy though, now having seen the Oilers just turn it on and take what looked like a series that was in control of the Kings and just run them over. But I do think we need to pump the brakes a little, at least for now, on the Oilers' hype. Just from what I'm seeing, the prices for them now to win the West, to win the Stanley Cup, they're being treated as now one of the two favorites to win the conference, one of the top four favorites to win the cup. I don't think we could be quite there yet, based on the goaltending and defense. Still major problems. McDavid and Draisaitl totally capable of just backpacking them to win this series, to do the whole thing. But I think more than LA was able to, especially in those last four games, Vegas will be able to defend a little better. Likely get Kemper didn't play bad, but I'm expecting Hill to just hopefully be average there. But they'll be able to exploit the Edmonton deficiencies on defense and in net a little more than LA was able to down the stretch there. Eichel needs to get going. Vegas knows how to play this Edmonton team. They've beaten them in the playoffs 2 years ago. I think they can do it again. And Ekholm being out still, again, like last series, it didn't matter when I brought this up against the Kings, but I do think it will be a factor here. If Ekholm was in and playing for this series, I'd look more towards the Oilers, but it's still going to be a Vegas bet for me. But I'm sure you can hear it in my voice now. Not as much confidence as I thought I would have prior to that LA series.
All right, so Ben is sticking with his Vegas Golden Knights. Not overly confident, but he's still sticking with the Golden Knights. Guys, I don't know what the LA Kings are going to do because they had Edmonton on the ropes. It looked like it was the best LA Kings team of the last 4 years, loaded with depth, so good at 5-on-5, defense, goaltending. They had it all. They had a 2-0 series lead. They had a lead in game 3, and then it was good night. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, the two mutants, as I like to call them, it seems like they can just win a series by themselves. Like, they remind me of, like, LeBron, like, carrying the '07 Cavs to the NBA Finals. Like, maybe it's not the greatest comparison. You could say the Oilers maybe have... Actually, you know what? Maybe they don't have as much depth as the '07 Cavs did. But it's just crazy what those two guys are able to do. And that's what kind of scares me in this series, but I can't ignore the goaltending. I mean, Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard, what are we doing here? And you know what, though, to be fair, Aiden Hill was not good in round 1 either. All three of those goaltenders, Skinner, Pickard, Hill, had negative goals saved above expected in round 1. So which goalie is going to step up in round 2? I have a lot more confidence that it's going to be Aiden Hill. In this series, I will gladly take the Vegas Golden Knights at minus 108, although I still think it's going to be tight because of McDavid and Draisaitl, and that's just what they do. There's going to be a couple games where they explode, 3-4 point games. We all know it's coming, but I think Vegas is going to squeak this one out. I think Jack Eichel is going to step up in this series. He was very quiet in round 1, as we mentioned. So I will take Vegas in this series at minus 108, but I think it's going to go the distance here. So I'm also going to sprinkle on the Golden Knights in 7 at plus 450 at Pinnacle. This is going to be a great second round series. All right. So that does it for each series in the second round of the playoffs. But before we close things out, gentlemen, I want to revisit some Stanley Cup futures. So Scott, I'm going to go to you first. Obviously, we were both on the Avalanche. Who are you eyeing down now in the Cup futures market?
Well, you could probably guess, I guess, by my comments, is that I'm now on board with the Dallas Stars. You know, to be the man, you got to beat the man. Well, I wanted the Avalanche, and the Stars beat the Avalanche, so now I'll ride with the Stars. They're plus 500. And then, you know, if they lose this round, I guess I'll have to take the Jets. But based on all the things that I was citing about their depth and presuming that you're going to get Robertson and Heiskanen back, I like the Stars as my new Stanley Cup pick.
All right, I like it. So before we get to you, Ben, I'm just going to mention the Panthers, at the time of recording, are the betting favorites at Pinnacle to win the Cup, plus are priced at a shade under 4-1. They're around plus 382. Carolina's next at plus 452. And then you have Dallas at 5-1. Ben, are you still sticking with the Golden Knights? They're at plus 650 right now. You got a better number on them, obviously, before the playoffs started, but where's your head at right now?
Yeah, just looking at the board here, I'm sticking with my Vegas pick. I don't love it as much now at plus 650 heading into this series of the Oilers, but still think it's a fine play. The one that sticks out for me is at the very bottom of the board, Washington at 10 to 1. I I think there's value there, and I would make that bet myself now. I think they're going to be able to get by Carolina. And then I've thought in the Eastern Conference, thinking Florida beats Toronto, the team that's best suited to maybe take down the Cup champs based on how they're built is this Washington team with the size, the nastiness. They played well against them in the regular season. And then once, thinking if they could beat Florida, once you get there, I mean, that's a good ticket to have if you're sitting in the Stanley Cup final. That's assuming a lot of things, but the value is there for me. I'd have them ahead of probably the Jets as currently formed, and Carolina plus 452. You can clip this if you want. I think that's a horrible bet at this point to make to win the Cup there. So, yeah, Washington would be a ticket I would add here, but yeah, riding up my Vegas future too.
All right, I like it, Ben. Looking at the biggest underdog on the board, the Caps at 10 to 1, and then throwing some major shade at the analytics darlings, the Carolina Hurricanes. I do agree with you, though, about the Canes. Anytime they run into a team with more higher-end talent, which might not be the case in this round, but if they get to the conference final and it's either Florida or even Toronto, they're probably going to be in trouble. So here's where I'm going with my new Stanley Cup future. I rode with Scott before the playoffs, and that ended terribly. And guess what? I'm running it back. I'm doing it again. I'm taking the Dallas Stars at plus 500 for a lot of the same reasons that Scott mentioned. This team is so deep. If they get fully healthy, watch out. I mean, this team is so good across the board. All four lines, their D-core, Jake Ottinger and Ned. This is a team that has made multiple runs deep in the playoffs in recent years, and they just haven't been able to get over the hump. I think that they should get through Winnipeg, and then I would imagine that they'll probably be favorites against either Edmonton or Vegas. I really like this Dallas Stars team. And I think Pinnacle actually has one of the best prices in market right now at plus 500. I've seen some other books that actually have the Stars listed as the current betting favorite to win the Stanley Cup. So I am going to roll with the Dallas Stars at 5 to 1. Let's hope that that doesn't end terribly like it did for Scott and I after round one. All right, that is going to do it for our second round preview of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like I say all the time, whether you're betting on main markets, player props, futures, you are going to get the best odds and the best payouts at Pinnacle during the entire Stanley Cup playoffs. So make sure that you are line shopping and checking the prices at Pinnacle. Enjoy the second round of the playoffs. I hope it's as electric as those 2 Game 7s that we just watched. That would be amazing. But best of luck. Enjoy the hockey. Good luck with all your bets. And remember to bet smart and bet Pinnacle.